Mark, thanks for joining me today. I'm pretty excited to hear, a little bit about what you've done in the past. Of course, we have met before, but yeah, Mark, why don't you tell us who you are? Just kind of personal overview. You're a little bit about your background.
I'm a born and raised transplant to Knoxville, Tennessee these days. I've been here just past a decade now. Married, wife, got 4 kids. The old American story. Here we are. So I guess a little bit about myself, short term, professionally. I think I spent the last decade-ish or so, maybe some more than that, focused on production and efficiencies and manufacturing, different avenues of the business, improving, well, more specifically, improving efficiencies, reducing waste, leading into more profit, better work-life balance for employees, all these different things that come as we develop lean processing and manufacturing.
And we know each other because we found you for a manufacturing business that metal fabrication. The owner I know like really concerned like how am I going to find someone that can kind of handle what I do? And we found you, and I know what you know in your intro just now you kind of made it seem like very ho hum, but I think it's quite impressive, and I'd love to hear you highlight what you accomplished for that business as their general manager.
So in that business there, it's more like any production facility or manufacturing facility. They struggled in lean manufacturing efficiencies, lots of bottlenecks to meet their peak production standards, lots of failures in the SOP department. Really, they had very broad, very lean SOPs that weren't very clearly defined. So they're the first step at that organization was to start a DMA-IC program where, if you're familiar with it, it focuses on data. It's very data driven. It's a Lean Sigma, Six Sigma policy. Basically, we want to analyze cycle times, their downtimes, and turn these into positives instead of negatives, so we could relieve those bottlenecks. There, I believe we discovered it was 60% of the lost time came from unplanned maintenance and losses in efficiencies where employees had no idea what to work on. So we prevented a preventative maintenance plan. We retrained some decent operators, made some changes in personnel. Unfortunately, that's part of the business. We cut downtime, I believe, by about 35% there, improve their overall efficiency by more than 10% within the first 2 quarters, which translates for them into, a couple $1 million in revenue, increased revenue.
That's great. And any other kind of areas of the business that you worked on, kind of like maybe quick wins when you arrived, or I'm kind of curious how you imagine like when you walked in versus probably, fast forward
Oh
later,
yeah.
what does it look like from
So
start to
when you break it down, they're very lean issue there. All drove down to communication, which is what a lot of companies suffer from. I suffer from it in my day-to-day life as well. So I'm sure you do as well. We intend to do the right things. We intend to say the right things, but we let the hustle and bustle get in the way of sometimes of actually executing that intention. So we basically the low-hanging fruit is what I call it. It was to sit the employees down in a group, buy them lunch, have a discussion. Hey guys, this is where we're at. This is where we're going. You know what I mean? Let's talk about what you guys think are the big issues, and then take that a step farther after those conversations, and you make some decisions, and you involve the team. Then you involve the different departments individually. Let's discuss. Let's do these things. Let's move into all these things. Will create a positive environment. A positive environment tends to feed efficiency, tends to feed proficiency, tends to feed income for a business. Right, even if it's just one more part out of one guy each day, just because he understands the importance of what he's doing, the value that he delivers to a company. You know what I mean? And what the company delivers to him. That's a big one we miss at my previous organization. That's where they were missing. They were receiving value and not returning the value back to the employee or the business itself in some instances. And this goes from incentive programs to their benefits to their time off to just how you speak to an employee on a day-to-day basis, when you're upset, when you're not upset, to keep that very level-headed, clean speaking terminology. It's not about the person, it's about the situation. So you got to remove emotion from the situation. And if you set clear standards and guidelines, then hopefully you can get there. So.
Yeah. Did you work on kind of sales and the revenue generation side of the business as well? I know you talked a little bit now about efficiency, lean, working with employees, but I'm kind of curious if, you're involved on the sales of a small business. I feel like as a general manager, general in nature, probably wearing a lot of hats.
Absolutely. I mean, I was focused on every facet of the business. This particular organization had long-standing issues from ownership to contracts, like I said, to sales to scrap issues. So yes, I mean, it was very broad spectrum to break into negotiating contracts with outside vendors, negotiating new contracts with outside vendors, or editing current contracts, making alterations so we could bring better material, more efficient material, better cost saving materials. And in this market we're in, supply chain is a huge issue. And one of my strong suits where I got my start was in logistics and supply chain. So I have a soft spot in me for supply chain. So to negotiate these contracts, you also negotiate the supply chain portion. How do we get it from here to there? More domestically now than international, because that's what the market is dictating with these tariffs and things of these natures that you and I, or they cannot control. But we can lead ourselves into a better, stronger understanding when we again communicate to our vendors what we need, what we expect, what they expect on both ends, and let's get there. So we went from a kind of just order from whoever we can get it from standard to here's your list. These are the people we spoke to. Once you break that top 5, game over. It goes straight to the general manager, which was myself, or operations manager, myself, or one of the owners before we pull the trigger on anything outside the norm. This is what the business standards. If we have to go outside the standards, it needs direct approval. There, that particular organization, was anything over $500 outside the normal had to come to get approval.
And now that you've done an amazing job there, I know you're maybe looking for the next challenge, next opportunity. What does that look like for you?
Next task for me is finding someone that needs my services, wants my services. I want to be a part of a collaborative team, right? Somebody that understands where they want to go. Maybe you're struggling to get there. Be that relationship, short term, long term. I prefer long term. Actually thought my previous organization was going to be long term, but they made some organizational changes, and it's a long story. But the business is moving, and I'm not. I mean, that's the gist of it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I view you as someone who can go anywhere, fix anything, right? A true captain of general managers in the truest sense. But, are there any particular industries or business sizes that, are ideal to you? Again, with the caveat that I believe I can put you anywhere and
Right.
say, and, fix any problem. I think that's been the experience that we've observed, watching your success. But, anything in particular that you're like, oh yeah, I would love this or that, or supply chain experience influencing that, or maybe truly not. But I'm just kind of curious, are there any specifics for you?
For me, we've had a similar discussion as before. I am obviously these days white collar, but I got my start blue collar. I told you before, I look white collar, I behave white collar, but if you cut me deep enough, you'll find the blue. Those are my people. I've spent many years in the corporate where people refer to yourself as a number. That's the common thing. You're only a number if you decide to be a number. In any organization, but the impact one person can have on some of these bigger organizations is what's leading me more into where I grew up in the blue collar industry. My father owns a company, a few construction companies. My uncles own pizzerias, things of these natures. That's where my heart is. In the family owned business, the smaller business, that's why I've kind of gravitated away from big corporate life. I was very successful in big corporate life, but I can be more successful in a day-to-day hands-on. I'm not for lack of a better term here, excuse my French, but a desk jockey, right? I believe in boots on the floor, produce more than boots in a chair. That's just who I am, and that's kind of where I'm going. Of course, I will entertain anything from anybody, because that's how we progress in life. You can't dismiss an opportunity without investigating an opportunity.
Yeah, it's good advice.
To kind of bluntly answer your question, it's family owned, smaller time businesses, 100 employees, a little less. I've managed 5,000 employees at one point in my career. When people say they manage 5,000 employees, they don't manage 5,000 employees. 5,000 employees manage you. You just do your best to collaborate, communicate. You know what I mean? I would like to be more hands-on, so that you can have discussions with those in those singular employees or individuals more.
Yeah. Selfishly, I'd love it if you could touch on your experience working with legacy entrepreneurs, myself, Taylor, and maybe some of the value that you felt that we brought to the process and to, the businesses that, for our clients. And I think one thing that you said that was interesting, that I also believe in, is that people can get lost in numbers, and people become a number. And I know that when I talk to owners, before they meet someone like yourself, a general manager is like a number, a big salary number that they don't want to take on, right? But one of the things that I think is hard, a challenge to overcome in those conversations, and I'm hoping you kind of speak to the value here, is like, I'm like, yeah, it'll cost you this much to bring on someone as talented as Mark. Look, talent costs you money to bring on. But then I often bring you up as being like, well, there was this other time that we hired Mark, and then he just like did all these amazing things, and then it works out for the business. So I'm kind of curious if you get to kind of selfishly touch on that value and your experience just kind of working with myself and Taylor.
Let's start with working with yourself and Taylor. I was shocked. I'll be honest. I've worked with, you can imagine, I've talked to many different talent agencies, or as people call them, headhunters, right? For lack of a better term. With you and Taylor, it's been a lot of time speaking with Taylor. I spoke with you quite a few times now, and it's more of a collaborative relationship. It's not a, hey, I got these opportunities, let's present it and just go from there. It was more of a, let's prepare you for where you want to be, not where you have to be, so to speak. Where I felt that I was able, or I am able currently, to dictate that opportunity. You guys present what you have. We talk about it in a very genuine aspect, and then we find a good fit for you, for me, and everybody's happy. I feel like the communication is pretty prompt. These type of things, we're well prepared for each step of the process. And the touchy subject for everybody is the money. Like you said, well, it's a bigger salary. It's these things. For me personally, and this is as truthful as I can be, it doesn't mean anything. At the end of the day, it has to be about relationships, and your goals have to be aligned. You can pay someone $1 million an hour if you haven't communicated, and they're not who you're not who you say you are. They're not who they say they are. You're not going to get from point A to point B. I think you know this from me. I actually accepted less salary at my previous organization because my heart was in it. I believed in the process. I believed in the people. I believed in the ownership. So when I put my money where my mouth is, so to speak, right? I had bigger opportunities, or let's say more financially bigger present opportunities, and I did not choose those just from sheer passion. So, and Legacy Entrepreneurs gave me that opportunity to even be able to make that decision, because I was headed towards, like everybody, seek the biggest payday. But in my short or long life, depending on how you look at it, I've learned that money doesn't drive the bus. It may drive the world, but it doesn't drive your soul. It doesn't drive who you are. And once you can separate the two, you can process a little better.
Yeah, and I think we always appreciated with you talking through what it was that you were motivated by. We've had other videos where we talk about like self-motivation and someone who cares as being like so important, and that's something that always came through with you. And I think it's just important in general for who's going to be a good general manager, and why. And when I'm asked like, wait, are you guys headhunters? I'm like, okay, I guess technically, sure, we can call it that. But at the same time, like the relationship that we had with you as a candidate was a lot different than I think the average headhunter, who's going to basically be like, here's a person, that person is just a number in a resume, and kind of take it or leave it, versus for us, we feel like, this person is going to be super impactful to someone's business. So we better be able to have like a substantive, mature, in-depth conversation with
Absolutely.
them. And the give and take, right? Like you're like, well, I do want these other things. This is important to me. It's like, yeah, like you should be telling us what you want and representing that effectively.
Absolutely.
You can't do that for yourself. You're definitely not going to do it for, another business and another business owner. So
Right. It's not all about the placement. People get lost in it, and that's just not what it's about. It shouldn't be. Sometimes it gets that way, and it just shouldn't be. My favorite term, and you've heard me use the term, is value. I'm a very value-driven person. I approach every aspect of my life value-driven. Does it deliver me value? Can it deliver me value? If it's not, how do I make it deliver me value? Or do we remove it from the situation? I'm very non-emotional, non-judgment. I don't play in that gray area too often. I do my best to stay out of there. We're very honest, dedicated individual, very passionate for what I do. If I feel like I can't be, then I won't be. It's as simple as that. And I know people are like, man, he seems arrogant. But that's just how it is. I don't want to waste anybody's time. I don't want to waste anybody's money, right? And I don't want them to waste my time as well, or money or anything like that nature. We need to work together, achieve a goal, set baselines, set guidelines, set over the moon expectations. Let's see if we can get there.
Well, Mark, why don't we close on that? It was Mark, driven by finding value for himself, business, life, and setting really high expectations. Mark, thanks for sharing your perspective and telling us about your experience.
Awesome, Joe. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.